Well, we promised it this week, and here it is. The classic character profile for episode 132 is Reg Holdsworth. Why did we pick him? Well, he's been on Big Brother this week, but we'll talk more about that later because there was suddenly something to talk about there. But Reg Holdsworth, I always quite liked him when I started because he was a proper comedy character, and when we talked through his storylines, just to find out that didn't really do very much serious. It was just basically bumbling from one romantic encounter, or what he was hoping would turn into a romantic encounter to another, and kind of perving over women and being a bit of an old lech, really. And you could have that back in Coronation Street back in those days, but I don't think he'd really fit in there. I think people might start making, I don't know, I think it'd be a bit uncomfortable having a character like Reg in it these days, but he was good for the 90s when he was in it. A lot of the information that I got together today came from not Coropedia or Wikipedia, because they don't have very much on there about Reg Holdsworth, but very useful 40 years anniversary Coronation Street book. So thank you very much for that book. So Reg Holdsworth, he was born on the 14th of March 1942 and married twice. First Veronica Hardback in 1989, and then Maureen Naylor, whose birthday it is this week, in 1994. Now, Reg first appeared in 1989 on the 25th of October, and he last appeared on the 24th of November 1995. That's appeared on the main show, of course, because he did come back a couple of times for... there was an after hours special in like 1999 that was separate to the main programme, and then he was on the DVD special from a few years ago as well, so he can't keep away. Although after what's been happening to Ken Morley this week in Big Brother, I'm not sure whether we'll be seeing him in Coronation Street again or anything anytime soon. Reg appeared in 410 episodes of Coronation Street, which puts him just out of the top 100 most featured characters, but he's still very memorable nonetheless, and as we've said, he is played by Ken Morley. Well, the first thing I wanted to say was I was really surprised when he went into Big Brother last week, and the announcer says that Ken Morley used to be a primary school teacher like me in the 60s. I had no idea about that. And
makes it sound like you were a primary school teacher in the 60s.
Not in the 60s. I'm like a modern day Ken Morley.
Oh,
in a way.
Goodness gracious me.
So it's good though, because it could mean that I could be in Coronation Street in the future still. I won't give up that dream yet.
It doesn't bar you from being in Corrie, being a teacher.
No.
And I was quite surprised to see that he was also in Hello Hello, which I used to watch as a kid. And I did not realise that he was the person who played General Leopold Wrong Flockenstuffen.
I don't know who that is.
Which I guess you wouldn't know because he had a different accent and he's a lot younger.
Well, looking at Ken Morley's IMDb stuff, he's played quite a lot of German characters on things. Obviously likes doing that accent. He was in...
Obviously he relishes the... prospect of being slightly
xenophobic.
I was being like that
he's a Nazi. No,
allegedly.
Well, he was in Red Dwarf as well. He played a Nazi pilot or captain or something in a Red Dwarf episode as well. But anyway, we'll talk more about that later. So Reg Holdsworth first. So he was in Corrie in 1989, but the first thing I could find out that he really did was in 1990 when he got thrown out by his wife, and he ended up sleeping in the Bettabuys stockroom because he used to work, I think he was the manager at the time of Bettabuys, the supermarket in Corrie. And back in the 90s, the main supermarket, which is now Freshco's, used to feature quite a lot. I don't know where it was that they filmed it. That could be another Coronation Street location tour, wherever they used to film the supermarket. But they don't really have any like common outdoor sort of recurring locations now, apart from the Red Wreck, do they? Would you like to see them go back and have more regular like supermarket kind of?
I would actually, yeah. I think it makes it feel a bit more real, doesn't it, when they go somewhere else?
Yeah, and like you have all like the members of the public walking by and everything, and I mean it's a different feel. It's more realistic. You're right. I'd like to see a bit more of that. But anyway. He was being kicked out by his wife, probably for just being annoying old lech, like we said. And he's ended up moving into the corner shop flat, where he irritated his landlord, Alf Roberts, because he's decided to put on a free bus to Bettabuys. He got it organised, which stopped on Coronation Street. So all of the people on Coronation Street then stopped going to the corner shop for their their meat and their bread and their milk, and went to Bettabuys instead. So Alf evicted him, and Reg returned home to his wife. 1991. I don't know what had happened to his wife by then, but he'd started chasing after Rita, poor woman. They went tea dancing together, and he was like making his romantic intentions clear, but she was not interested at all. He tries to curry her favour by putting on a trolley dash at the supermarket and then rigged it so that she won.
That would win my heart.
I know it would. Well, she went through with it, but everything that she got from it, she ended up donating to the hospital for Emily.
What a worthy person.
Yes, just to get away from him, I think. And meanwhile, Vera Duckworth was starting to spread a rumour that Reg and Rita were romantically involved. I know, it's scandalous. And I think, he was still living with his wife at the time as well, I think. Mm-hmm. So later that year, Reg's boss, Brendan Scott, came to Weatherfield to investigate these accusations from Vera. And although Vera kind of backed down at the end, word of the supposed affair got through to Reg's wife, and she started divorce proceedings. So Reg was out on his ear again, back to Coronation Street, and he moved next door to Rita in number 12, the flat next door to Rita's, so she couldn't get rid of him. Also that year, how do you pronounce this Roman god's name? Bacchus, is it?
Oh, I don't know that one.
He was dressed up as Bacchus. It's like the god of plenty or something.
God of like wine and plenty.
Yeah, which
I know. I've seen it written down, but I've never known how to pronounce it.
Yeah, he dressed up as him. There was a Weatherfield carnival.
Can you imagine him dressed as that? Actually.
Yes, you don't even need to see the picture. He was there with all the beautiful women kind of falling off of his arms as well, probably under much duress. And yeah, his Bettabuys float was based on the Horn of Plenty, which is also quite suitable for him because he had plenty of horn.
Oh my gosh.
But he refused to pay the bill to Angie Friedman, who designed it. I'd like to see the Weatherfield Carnival resurrected. Nice
me too. Why not?
Community. Maybe that could be a little job that Yasmin could do.
Sort it out. She can get Roy to.
Summer Weatherfield Carnival, and we can have a Roy's Rolls float. And now we've got so many businesses. We can have an Underworld float with like the Knickers flying and Rovers float and streetcars float. I think I'd like to see that. More community stuff.
Yeah, more.
1992. Now, the cabin that year was burgled twice in the middle of the night, and Reg jumped on the chance to comfort Rita, but he was gutted when, instead of falling into his arms, she started dating toffee salesman Ted Sullivan. And Reg tried to dig the dirt on Ted to try and put her off of him, and he discovered that Ted's last wife died in mysterious circumstances, and Ted inherited a ton of cash, although that didn't put Rita off.
No.
Would it have put you off to find out that the person that you're dating has got wads of money? Would that make you even keener?
I don't know if it is a put off, honestly.
I think it was insinuating that Ted had killed his ex-wife. Anyway, this is where Rita's load of money comes from, because Ted ended up dying of a brain tumour or something not long afterwards. I think he knew that he was on his way out then, and he ended up leaving it all to Rita, and that's why Rita's rolling in it.
Rita's rolling.
Yes.
1993, Reg's first love, Maureen Naylor, she got hired to work on the tills at Bettabuy. And 24 years ago, her mum, Maud, had broken up Maureen and Reg, so Reg decided to rekindle their passion. Yeah,
Maud was a bit of a character. She was an old cranky woman in a wheelchair, and she did not like the idea of Reg. No, she saw him for what he was and thought he wasn't good enough for her daughter, which he probably wasn't, but it didn't stop them.
No. Well, Reg lured Maureen into his waterbed in one of Corrie's most memorable comedic scenes.
Yes.
And it went a bit wrong, because Derek was drilling into the ceiling in the room below, and somehow managed to drill all the way through the ceiling, through the section between the floors, and up through the floorboards. Not just through the floorboards, but also through the bottom of the bed, piercing it and puncturing.
Yeah, I think if they had sturdier ceilings, that Rita might have stood a chance when the tram crashed down on that place a few years ago as well.
Step up what they build.
Anyway, that was a funny comedy scene, wasn't it? That's often on the clip shows, and they're going up there, and the water's falling out everywhere. Maureen's going, "Oh, who are these people coming into our room?" And then apparently there's a story as well that
This goes to show you what kind of person
Ken Morley is. Yeah, apparently the water was cold and he'd hoped that it had been warm for the scene, so he apparently got his own back on the production team for doing this by standing up and letting his towel drop down in front of them, and he didn't have anything underneath, so he flashed the production team.
What a punishment.
Yeah, seeing his shriveled up old man bits.
This was in 1993 as well.
I know. Even more shriveled now, probably.
He threatened to take Maureen away from Maud if she tried to come between them again, and secretly tried to get her put into a home.
Now, that year as well, Alf decided to sell the corner shop up, and Reg offered him £5,000 less than the asking price because he was a bit of a chancer, and he got turned down flat, basically. And instead, Brendan Scott, if you remember, was Reg's boss at Bettabuys, ended up buying it himself. But at least that did mean for Reg that he was promoted to area manager. Brendan didn't do so well in charge of the corner shop. He died of overwork, of a heart attack after a few months, and his widow offered Reg first refusal of the shop. So rather than learning from his lessons from last time, Reg made another insultingly low offer, and so she's like, no, I'm going to put it up for auction, tough luck. So Reg then had to wine her and dine her and grovel to her, which of course Maureen walked in on, called off her engagement to Reg because they were engaged by this point. And then she went off, got drunk and slept with Curly, who we haven't mentioned so far in the character profile, but there was always a really good double act between Reg and Curly at Bettabuys and later Furman's Freezers, with Curly being the more intelligent one, but always having to for a lot of the time play second fiddle to Reg, his incompetent, useless boss. So that was quite good that she went up and slept with him. Had a bit of drama. 1994. He threatened to resign from Bettabuys because Maureen was told she was going to be made redundant. And unsurprisingly, Bettabuy readily accepted his resignation. I think he thought that he was more valued than he actually was, I suppose.
That's a bit embarrassing.
So he used his redundancy money to buy the corner shop, so he's in charge at last. And I think that's how I remember it. When I first started watching it, Reg was in charge of the corner shop. So that year in 1994, Reg and Maureen got married, but then fell out straight away because Reg argued with Maureen's brother about who was going to be looking after Maud. But anyway, the pair moved into number 12 together, but Maud was still scheming to try and split them up by pretending that her house had had a break-in, so Maureen went to stay with her for a little bit. Reg then left the shop in Maureen's hands, the corner shop, when he started running Furman's Freezers, but she couldn't cope and had a breakdown. So the following year, 1995, saw another quite famous Reg moment when he bought a toupee to make himself look younger. Basically, I think by this time, all the way through, the producers just making fun of Ken Morley and just seeing what silly things they could make him do as Reg. It was all because an American firm was interested in buying Furman's Freezers, and Reg was kind of worried that he'd be made redundant or whatever from there, so he wanted to make himself look younger. But the buyout fell through anyway. He still kept his wig. He was also he also took part in an identity parade that year because there was a story about a red wreck flasher, and he was called up to be on the identity parade. I don't think he was suspected of it, but the woman who was doing the parade picked him out as being the red wreck flasher, and the police agreed and thought, well, this wig that he's wearing must be part of the disguise. But he ended up burning his wig in frustration. Luckily for him, Phyllis Pierce ended up getting flashed by the real flasher, so Reg was let off in the end. And that was Reg's last storyline, because late in 1995, he got a promotion, again, left Weatherfield for Lowestoft, promising Maureen that their marriage could survive. But alas, it did not, because in 1996, Maureen discovered that Reg had resigned from his job and had run off with Yvonne Bannister, a rich heiress. And he also got her pregnant as well, at a quite old age. Don't want to think about that. He does still have it in him. So yeah, they ended up getting divorced, Maureen and Reg, and that was the end of them. So that was the last that we saw of Reg Holdsworth on the street itself. But he did make a couple of returns, like I said before, Rover's returns. By 1999, he was working at a cash and carry in Calais. That's a bit of a tongue twister. So in 1999, they had this after-hours spin-off, which was I think it was on for a week or so at 9 or 10 o'clock at night or something, and it was a way that ITV were trying to get more people tuning into their channel in the evening, and they brought back Reg Holdsworth and Bet Lynch, and also Bet's granddaughter Vicky, to have these little adventures in Brighton and Calais. So Reg was there working in Calais, having an affair with his assistant there, because Steve and Vikram were on it as well. They'd like gone on a booze cruise over to Calais. Reg ends up basically getting drunk, ends up in Vikram's van, and when they return to Brighton, which is where Bet and Vicky were, he rolls out the back of the van, and ends up getting embroiled in Bet's problems because she'd been going out with this guy called Bruce who just died, and he had a massive boat, and Reg had to pretend to be Bruce so they could sell the boat or something. I don't remember. I watched it when it was on. It wasn't amazing, but apparently he signed up for it all. Julie Goodyear signed up to it because the scripts were so amazing. But I don't think they were. Do you think they should do anything like that again? Because
No.
they do things like that on Hollyoaks.
Yeah.
I hear they do after hours ones. I don't think they particularly need to, because when this was on, it wasn't like it was full of swearing or nudity or anything.
You don't need another show.
I think back then, I mean,
It
that was
complicates things.
it did complicate things. It's like the DVD specials when they mention those as well. But like already what goes on Coronation Street is pretty racy, especially compared to, well, in 1999 it was kind of starting to get there, I suppose, but it doesn't need it, and it also means that we'd have to do even more talking on the podcast.
Exactly.
I don't think I could cope with that many episodes in a week.
No.
He also, bizarrely, apparently appeared in an Emmerdale VHS spin-off that year called Don't Look Now, The Dingles in Venice, and I couldn't find any information about what he actually did there, but he was actually in role as Reg Holdsworth in Emmerdale.
So we've had confirmation that they do exist within the same universe.
Exactly, it's all the same. Well, and EastEnders must do as well, because do you remember on Comic Relief, was it, or Children in Need a few years ago, there was a Coronation Street EastEnders crossover?
I don't think Children in Need is canon.
Is it not?
No.
But it's straight to video Emmerdale spin-offs, definitely.
It is, yeah. In 2010 he appeared in A Knight's Tale DVD as Sir Reg Holdsworth at Tatlock Towers, when Mary tries to seduce Norris by taking him on a trip there.
Yeah, so this was like a DVD that was like a 15th anniversary from the beginning of the first DVD, which is like a Caribbean cruise one, I think, that was set in Tatlock Towers, named after Albert Tatlock, and Reg was brought back into it again, so was Curly. And it also had Rosie going off to do some modelling there. And Curly was the director of the company that runs Tatlock Towers. This was, I can't remember when Curly left, but it must have been only a few years before that. But by then he'd already split up with Emma, which is great because Curly can now come back without having his boring wife in tow. But anyway, on the DVD, Curly fired Reg when a wild boar brought in for the evening's feast was still frozen solid when it was time to be cooked, and it's a nice little role reversal having Curly in charge of him. So Norris told Reg that Mary was loaded because he was fed up of Mary kind of trying to seduce him and whatever. She's not really gone after Norris at all anymore, does she? Back then she was well horny for Norris. So Reg thinks, well, I'm in there if Mary's got a load of money, and proposed to her. Norris ended up feeling guilty, though, about saying this, and went to warn her about Reg. So Reg and Norris ended up going head-to-head in a medieval tournament, like they were doing jousting and stuff, and although he wins, Reg is rejected by Mary when he finds out that she's just as penniless as he is.
Why does he reject her if she hasn't got any money?
Oh no, Mary rejects him. I haven't seen this, I was just copying down what I read. Mary rejects Reg when she finds out that he's just as penniless as she is. Or the other way around,
Whatever.
I don't remember.
They
don't get it on, basically.
No, and at the end, Reg and Curly drive off into the sunset together.
Yeah, so that's the last, and I think that's quite a nice way to leave Reg and Curly, because they were this double act through the 90s, and who knows what harebrained schemes they're getting up to.
Now, this is Ken Worley talking about himself. An archetypical Burke, instantly recognisable by all the people he'd ever worked for as a little twerp. Self-love was one of his main foibles. Oh, that is him talking about Reg.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I thought he was talking about himself there.
No, he is not. He is talking about Reg. He says everyone has had an annoying, horrible boss. I think lots of people have had useless bosses.
Yeah. And he ended up having roles in Red Dwarf after Corrie, He was in Hardware with Martin Freedom, Benidorm. He was in Safe Style UK double glazing adverts, which plagued the nation.
They still do, don't they? Those Safe Style UK adverts. It's him and Cannon and Ball. You buy one, you get one free.
They're definitely catering to a certain type of person, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is that why I've never bought any double glazing in my life?
Apparently Safe Style UK is like totally rips you off.
Well, he's also been in a few celebrity programmes like Celebrity Fit Club, where he lost 2 stone, and Celebrity MasterChef last year, and he's also, I don't know, he was also in Big Brother this year.
Also in
apparently.
Big Brother
I don't
this
know,
year.
Celebrity Big Brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, looking back on Reg, I suppose that there was a little bit of crossover with him and Fred Elliott, but I don't think like 2 of them could have been in the programme at once, because they were both kind of a bit loved up old.
Was he likeable?
Comedy.
Was he supposed to be likeable?
He wasn't like nasty, he wasn't a villain or anything. He was supposed to be like people find him really annoying and people enjoyed seeing him get his comeuppance and getting into silly scrapes. But
it's kind of a bit Norrisy.
Yeah, exactly. He was a bit Norrisy, but then Fred came along, kind of shop owner, going after the ladies, and I don't think Coronation Street really needed 2 characters like him, and Fred was a lot more lovable as well. But I suppose in the corner shop there's still Dev, and there's elements of Reg and Dev, I suppose, like being a bit of a womanizer. So the legacy lives on. So I'm sure we'll talk more about Reg in a minute when we go onto the cabin, because he's been in Big Brother.
Certain things
to talk about.
Ken Morley has, not Reg. Although if he told me he was in a character as Reg Holdsworth, I don't think I would have been surprised.